Well, hey, everybody, this is Don with the Vlog of Many Things, and with me is my compatriot in pissing people off today.
Oh, me? Piss people off? Never.
Never. Eric,
Never.
how you doing today, my friend?
Good.
I wanted to do this impromptu video. I know we normally don't do lives on Saturday. I am going to warn people right now. This is not a political video, okay? This is a video that's going to simply talk facts. And if the facts upset your political leanings, then tough, because this is a very serious subject. It is affecting wide range things that I think the average person doesn't even understand. I have had a series of video calls, phone calls, emails, and communications, everything from U.S. Customs, DHL rep, all the way up through Creality, Elegoo, and also several Chinese paper manufacturers, U.S. paper manufacturers. It has been an absolute crazy couple of days. And, I just think that people need to understand what the hell happened today. I'll put it in context. Today, a 54% tariff took effect for imported goods from China. And I've seen a lot of people online throwing a lot of stuff out on Facebook. A lot of people are offering up their opinion because, and I'm not trying to disrespect anybody, but these are people who have no idea what they're talking about because they're not in the paper buying business, paper or game manufacturing. They're kind of just seeing something and they're kind of like throwing darts at a dartboard in the dark, hoping for a bullseye. Where do you want to start, Eric?
Oh, you want to start from the beginning? I mean, where else would you start from?
All right. We all know that Donald Trump ran on tariffs. And we all know that Donald Trump got wide support because of tariffs. Because on the face of it, tariffs sound like a good thing. We're going to start taxing all these people we've been buying from. We're going to get all this money dumped into the United States coffers, and tariffs are a good thing. Well, the problem with a lot of people is they don't really understand how tariffs operate. And tariffs, the money that is paid from tariffs do go into the general coffers of the United States.
Or any country that charges.
Yes.
For the most part, yes.
But the problem here is this, is there are tariffs that you can absorb as an entity, and there are tariffs that you just simply cannot. And the problem is like, and I'm going to choose China because we're talking about the game market here. China doesn't pay any tariffs. And that's the mistake that people make. China doesn't pay tariffs when they sell and send something to Don or Eric. It is Don and Eric as the importer that pays the tariff. A tariff is a tax, not on the exporter. A tariff is a tax on the importer. And there's a term here, and this is what makes today so special. There's another thing that takes effect today called de minimis. And this is a term that not many people understand. De minimis is something that was put in place a very long time ago for people who buy products from overseas where there are taxes like tariffs. And what de minimis means basically is de minimis, as an example, let's say Eric just goes and buys a printer from Creality for $5.99 on sale. Creality AUS does not stock that printer. Creality sends it to you from China. That's where you get it from. Now, Eric would get that printer for $599 on his front doorstep, delivered by UPS, and Eric would be a happy camper. He would set it up and print away because of de minimis. What de minimis does is it does not tax individuals who buy from China on items less than, I believe it's like $800. That has been lifted as of today. So now, when you go on and you start seeing, let me real quickly overlay the chat so we can kind of address
Oh
comment.
yeah.
My apologies, folks. So basically, the problem with de minimis being lifted is people are arguing now online things like, well, a tariff ain't going to affect me because I just buy like 5 or 6 books in such online, or I may go do this, or no, it affects everybody now, and everybody's going to get hit. But the question becomes, how does this affect the general game manufacturing market?
I've seen a lot of posts about it, and by the way, and as you well know, I know a lot of people that work in the industry, some that work full time in the industry, and they are fearful for their future.
Yes.
And I listen, folks. I enjoy PDFs and electronic books. I've had a Kindle for 15. I had the first Kindle that came out when they gave you free wireless. Okay. So I'm wired in on the digital format, but I still like my physical books. You can see that bookshelf behind me. I'm surrounded by physical books and games, box games, and dice. I could probably reach down below. I can. And uh, bring up some random effing dice. Your dice are going to cost a lot more, by the way, folks. And just some stupid thing that just occurred to me, by the way, Don. Timu, Timu, that sells you tchotchkes and shite that you probably don't need, already has been getting a pass pretty much by the United States Postal Service and shipping their stuff at less than cost. We didn't fix that with this, right? We didn't fix the fact that Timu gets to ship stuff for next to nothing using the postal service. But those of you who are buying stuff on Timu are going to suddenly find yourself.
And I've got one a little bit more closer to home for gamers. We all love Shadow Dark, don't we?
Yes.
Well, guess what? Shadow Dark, as of right now, has raised $2,044,507, has 10,667 backers with 4 days to go. And guess what her costs just did? They went up 54%. How is that going to affect that Kickstarter alone, let alone the other big name Kickstarters out there? Because I'm not trying to be a jerk here.
Right.
Okay. But I will guarantee you, I'll bet you she didn't think about a 54% increase in her net cost now. Because, again, we're talking about realism here. When you're making $2 million off a Kickstarter, or whether you make 5,000, 10,000, you're paying between 28 and 36% tax depending on where you're at anyways on that money. Now you take that out of that Kickstarter, and now you take an additional 54% net cost out of that Kickstarter, or not net cost, importation cost.
Right. It adds to your net cost, though, and that's the whole thing. In the end, who pays for the tariffs?
Well,
The consumer.
exactly. Just like as an example, Madagot and Colossal Games who raised over $2 million for Rise of the Gods on Kickstarter, has just announced that they're asking now all supporters for an additional 3 to 10 US dollars to try to offset their costs. And there's other news in here. Nintendo announced that their April release of the new Switch 2, they're not shipping to the United States right now. They have now canceled the April release. They have indefinitely pushed it back and such. I Was Raised a Poor Orc Child said something very, very interesting here. I want to highlight it. They say, I don't need any more of those items from China. Absolutely, you are 100% categorically wrong. And I'm going to tell you the reason why you are wrong is because everything from D&D to Shadow Dark to D20 delving parts, should I say,
Hmm.
are from China. So now let's take a look at what he just said. Let's say he goes, you know what, or she, sorry, I don't know who you are, but let's say I was raised a poor child says, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to support US manufacturers. Okay, good point. But this is the problem. Let's say local dice manufacturers that make their own dice in Indiana. There's one right down in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Where do you think they get the plastic beads to make their dice? They buy that by bulk from China.
Of course.
So this is the problem that we're running into now with this 54% tariff. Let's take all the political bullshit out of it. I don't care who you voted for, okay? All right? Even if we had Harris in office right now and Harris did this bullshit, we'd be having the same conversation. This is not a the purpose of this video for me is not an anti-Trump rant. This video to me is as a game manufacturer, as a paper and product importer, as a book manufacturer and manual manufacturer. This grossly affects my business. I was getting ready to hire somebody locally. I'm not doing that now. So there's someone out there, I know I'm a drop in the ocean of whatever, but there's somebody out there right now that could have had a $22.50 40-hour a week job locally. That's not going to have it now because now I have to step back that plan
Right.
because of this 54% tariff. Then on top of that, I was informed by my customs rep something that really freaked me out. It's reciprocal. So for those of you who do not even know what reciprocal means when it comes to importing goods, is right now I have lots of stuff sitting in a warehouse for D20 delving. The problem I'm having here is this. That tariff now applies to what's been sitting in that warehouse. Reciprocal, including not stuff that's as of being shipped today and being received today from China. It's stuff that has not been picked up yet.
Yep.
And Rory here, or excuse me, TXG makes a very good report
Yep.
or
I saw that.
point because I saw this argument online. He says even if the argument is made that raising tariffs will bring back production to the U.S., you'll still have to wait years before that increased production or production happens. And that's 100% correct because the problem is, well, I mean, the thing is I understand you're good at waiting, but the problem that you run into with this, I was raised a poor child, is that, you know, this has such a, it's not anything other than for some reason targeting trade partners that we should not be targeting like this because it doesn't do anything for our industry as a whole for gaming. If in fact, you know, I raised a poor child said, sorry, Don, that could suck, although it may go away soon. Good point, may. The
You can't
problem with,
bank on May.
yeah, and not only that, but what it would take is it would take Congress to step in. We have a Republican controlled Congress. Again, let's take politics out of this, though. We got to look at realities. We have a Republican controlled Congress that for some reason does not want to defy the Republican president. And, you know, it is one of these issues here that again it is so wide ranging. Gamma literally called this dire news for the tabletop game industry. Warlord Games. I mean, let me talk a little bit about how far-reaching this is. Warlord Games, who makes Conflict 47 and Bolt Action, they're based out of the UK. They have announced as of today a 10% increase because UK got a 10% tariff. So everybody's increasing prices. Rob, how you doing? He says, I worked at a manufacturer writing motion control software for a metal cutting machine. I can't begin how much trade barriers like tariffs screw us over. Exactly. And I bet you the company you work for is a relatively small company. And I was raised a poor child, says Don. You act like this won't change. It's reciprocal. Trump only did it because they've been doing us dirty for a long time. That is absolutely 100% wrong. Absolutely 100% wrong. We have been one of the primary importers from places like China. When you take a look at what China was charging us in tariffs for paper products and plastic products, I'll call it that because that's what I deal in. Okay, when you look at what China was charging the United States for importation, and you look at what we're now charging China, China was charging us 4% more in tariff than what we were at the time. Trump didn't raise it 4 or 5%. He raised it 50%, 54% total.
Well,
Um,
and I believe that see,
oh, I see. I'm sorry. I got it.
they
I
don't,
have seen this
Spencer, they don't.
nonsense spread all over the place. Spencer, I get it. I saw this. Wrong. What you have to understand is this, is that under de minimis, that's where the 10% rate kind of falls. And you look at the de minimis statute, okay? There is a under 10% clause. That's under the de minimis provision. The de minimis provision has been lifted. It's been terminated under Trump's 54% tariff. He signed it, removed it. So the problem, Spencer, is yes, you would normally be correct, but because of de minimis being part of this termination series and along with the increase in tariffs, that no longer is in effect. Theudas, hold on a second. Let me find his comment. Theudas says, Don, Canada has a 300% tariff on U.S. milk as one example. There's definitely been some dirtiness, so to speak, in these rates. Absolutely wrong. And I'm going to tell you the reason why, Theudas, my friend. The only reason why Canada placed a 300% tariff on U.S. milk was because what we did to them. We have in the past several months since Trump took office targeted every one of our trading partners. And the only thing they're doing is they're acting in kind. Okay? That's all this is. Just like with the alcohol. The only reason why China removed alcohol, or because Canada removed alcohol from their shelves, was because what the United States did to them. I'm sorry, but, and I'm going to use a really bad analogy. If I walk up to Eric on the street and I punch Eric's wife in the face, chances are Eric's going to punch me back harder. It's going to be reciprocal. It wasn't Eric who started the fight with Don. Eric just stopped the fight. And that's what's happening here with these tariffs is, again, let's pull the political part out of this. If you want to talk facts, these tariffs that were placed on the United States by places like China, the UK, France, Germany, and now and China were only done after we did these high tariffs on them. Because when you take a look at the existing tariffs between, yes, each country has tariffs. That's normal. I mean, heck, the UK has VAT, value added tax. Rory says, Rob Conley, you've been at it a long time, man. That's cool. You worked through some pretty huge changes in programming. Yes, he has. Rob says, it's not too bad we're doing this stuff since the late 80s. Mostly these days, ladder logic, DSL, way easier. Don, that tariff has existed for a long time. It is not new. Let's take a look here real quick. Eric, you run with it for a minute.
Okay. Well, I just found something I wanted to share. I had to open up the YouTubes on the side here because those tariffs that let's see how much of this will actually fit into the chat box. So in any case, those high tariffs on milk is only, or dairy products, is only if we exceed an amount that we've already negotiated with Canada via Trump. So if we exceed the negotiated amount, then the tariffs kick in on the amount that is beyond the tariff-free amount.
That's
Uh,
right. And
so,
I'm going to read. Let me read directly from the U.S. Dairy Association. Okay.
yep,
This is directly from the United States Dairy Importers and Exporters Association. Trump's post on social media read in part, Canada is cheating United States farmers on USMCA. In 2024, Canada retained tariffs on various U.S. goods, particularly in protected sectors like dairy, that are operated under a supply management system. Some examples of Canadian tariffs on U.S. dairy outside the limited quota are milk up 243%, butter up 298%, cheese up to 245%. And these increases in tariffs are in direct response to Donald Trump's tariffs upon the Canadian dairy industry and are based upon existing quotas and exceeding quotas. So, Eric, you are correct. And again, I'm not trying to be insulting to anybody, but this is why the political aspect of this needs to be pulled out of it, because this is the rhetoric that people look at and go. And Diatis says another comment, 20% milk tariff, excuse me, let me real quickly look at this. 20% milk tariff existed in 2018. Absolutely. And I can look it up, but I imagine that they had a tariff on us or we had a tariff on them also. So these tariffs are not one sided, people.
right.
Okay. We have a very, and let's choose milk for a minute. We have a very, very robust milk production in domestically. Milk being a 20% tariff on milk being imported or exported from Canada isn't going to hurt us a bit. A 54% tariff against games isn't really theoretically going to hurt the average gamer. What it's going to do is it's going to put a lot of small game publishers out of business because they're not going to be able to price themselves out of it. Not only that is, and Thyatis says the point is to drive these down to 0%. Thyatis, you economically cannot do that because you have to be able to make some money. That's why tariffs are never been a really big issue. You know, we've always paid tariffs. Foreign companies have always paid tariffs. And that's the problem here.
Yeah.
Because this is the other aspect of this that people are not getting is, you know, and Kelsey with Shadow Dark is a prime going to be a victim of this. I don't care how much money she made. You couldn't pay me to be in her shoes this morning. You know, people are going, she raised $2 million. You know what? Awesome. I think that is absolutely stupendous. But now she's got a big problem. A
Yep.
big problem.
Well, and part of the thing is, and folks, I didn't realize this when I first was looking at these tariffs. These tariffs aren't necessarily you hit us with a 30% tariff, we're hitting you with a 30% tariff. It's we have a trade imbalance, and we're going to fix that trade imbalance by hitting you with hard tariffs,
Yeah.
high tariffs. That isn't quite how it was initially explained to the average person, but that is the reality of what is going on. And yes, the trade imbalance with China is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, what's going on with AI and automation, we got to find ways to not have a country full of people who are unemployed or underemployed. We got to bring back necessary manufacturing. But is the best way to cut off your hand just because you got an infection on your finger? I don't think so. Okay, and I'm not. And remember, I'm not really a publisher. I'm not a printer. I'm not those people that are involved in producing that I know. This is very worrisome for them. And so for those of us that are in the chat and go, well, it doesn't affect me. That's great. It probably doesn't, but it does affect a lot of people that produce the stuff that you enjoy.
And Agile Monk says something here again because he's late to the video. Agile Monk, my suggestion for you is this: is to watch this video earlier. Your that no longer is in effect. This whole book exemption thing was under a de minimis statute. It's gone. Sorry, books are part of this now. And see, the thing is the problem again is exactly what Eric said. This is going to grossly affect the gaming industry in ways that people are not thinking. You have all these massive. I'll go right down the line real quick. You have all these massive Kickstarter campaigns like Kelsey, Shadow Dark, the new Shadow Dark campaign setting. She's now got a 54%. She woke up now this morning to a 54% net increase in her costs. Period. That's devastating to her. I don't care what anyone says. And then also along with that is, I'm going to real quickly do this. Edward Cobb says, please explain to me why trade imbalance is bad. Isn't it rather an issue of the speed at which a little piece of paper moves around the world? The faster, the better. Well, there's always going to be trade imbalances depending on the infrastructure you're set up for. There's a trade imbalance with games. When you take a look at why does China make more games and ship to the United States than the United States does? Well, because China has geared up for it. China has a far less labor cost. China has invested by giving companies money to build and do. So it depends. I mean, on the thing. Thyatis says, on the contrary, Trump did indeed mention this last summer to the point of fix a trade imbalance. In addition, everything else was said. I don't know that it will lead to that, but I do recall. Yet Trump did say this. But this is the problem. Trump did not talk about a 54% increase. Trump was talking 10 to 20. A 10 to 20% tariff, additional tariff, would still be something that is difficult but dealable. Let's see here. Agile
Oh,
Monk makes a point.
it's an executive order, though. So,
Yes.
um, and Trump's been doing a lot of executive orders. Some I agree with, some I don't necessarily agree with. But if you do a search on Google right now and you search de minimis exemption, you will find a bunch of stories from a day or two ago from Axios, Business Insider, the New York Times, WhiteHouse.gov, AP News, Reuters, all explaining that this is a blow to Timu. It upends e-commerce. So these are legitimate articles. This isn't, crying wolf. This isn't, oh, it doesn't apply. It's out there.
Yeah, and the
Yeah.
thing is, I'm not talking out my ass here. I am very keyed into this because we manufacture. And I'm not trying to turn this into a political thing. Um, you know, Real quick, Agile Monk says China uses slave labor. And again, I'm not trying to sound like a jerk here, but nobody gives a shit about China using slave labor, you know what I mean, when they're buying a board game for $14.99. I don't recall many people standing outside board game shops going, China uses slave labor, stop selling, yada, yada, yada. I don't see that, because it doesn't affect you. People go, they buy their Reeboks, they don't care. They can buy cheap shoes, clothing. They don't care about what the end cost of it is. Now, wait till you go to the store and you have to pay, instead of $16.99 for that cheap ass shirt, you're paying $25 type thing. Um, Real quick, Rory asks, do most books for American consumption come from China? Yes, they do. Um, this is another thing that people have to understand. Places like that do POD, Lightning Source, okay, Ingram, Lightning Source, Amazon, they do a ton of POD. It is still up in the air how they're going to be affected, because what they tend to do is China buys, or excuse me, Amazon buys from China. Lightning Source, I know at least buys from one U.S. mill because a rep from Lightning Source was in on one of my video rep calls. So the place like Lightning Source, if they're buying from a U.S. mill, they're not like me. They don't buy a pallet, two or three or four at a time. These companies buy tons of paper at a time. I mean, they make contracts. So certain places should have some adjustment, but I'll tell you something happened as of this morning. U.S. paper mills announced a 35% hike on their paper. Why? Because they're profiteering.
Yep.
You know, real quick, Rory says, I'd rather have assumed that the delivery cost would be prohibitive, would have assumed Mexico produced books for USA. No, Mexico doesn't produce books in the United States. They're mainly out of China. Like if you go to Amazon POD, Amazon produces books in the United States. They actually have 3 book producing facilities, but their paper and ink comes from China. And this is another aspect what people don't get about game manufacturing. Even if you have a game manufacturer in the United States buying domestically, their printing ink and their machines and their parts come from China. Epson, everyone, all the major ones, all their inks and their toners come from China. So, like on a 12 color process machine like moi has, $2,500 to refill the ink. Well, guess what? That just went up to $3,700 to refill ink. You see how this is affecting small printers and small game manufacturers? Because and it's our fault because what we've done as a country is we have become reliant upon foreign goods. So, St. Cuthbert, how are you doing? So the problem that we have here is you know it's just a huge mess because of this, because nobody's prepped for it, because we can't, because we're not geared in the United States to do stuff like this. And when you look at tariffs on China, it's just like this morning a guy was talking about the used mini market. He's like, well, the tariffs affect the used mini market, and people are going, no, because I'll just make my own minis. No, it's going to affect you because of where is all the resin made for Elegoo and Creality in places it's made in China.
Right.
People are going, well, why can't somebody just simply go into like the meeple making and parts manufacturing here in the United States? Well, because all the raw plastic bead goods, which is you buy them beads, little plastic beads, and get melted down for injection molding to make meeples and dice and all those parts. They're all based out of China. You know, U.S. paper. Agile Monk says, yes, Don, you're right. U.S. paper is exploiting this. Trump and Doge are going to investigate and see if they can deal with U.S. paper to keep costs down. No, that's absolutely 100% Agile Mark patent BS, because it doesn't matter about price gouging. The president cannot, without implementing the War Powers Act, sit there and say, I'm stopping
Right.
the price of paper. Trump can't do that because paper is a commodity. The president, even under executive order, does not control commodities. The
Right.
markets control commodities.
And listen, Doge has one mission, and that's to find government inefficiency.
That's right.
And it has
They can,
nothing to do with
with
the
the
price of your milk, your
that's
eggs,
right.
your paper. I mean, let's. I'm going to say it. Let's keep our feet in reality.
Yeah.
I happen to like much of what Elon has accomplished in the private sector, and maybe even some of what he's done in the government sector. But he's not going to be affecting the price of your paper.
Yeah.
And that ain't that. Trust me. And honestly, he doesn't give a fuck. Okay.
No, anybody that thinks Elon Musk cares about the average, person in this chat is delusional. He's a billionaire who's out for what? He's not doing. He's working for Doge for free because I think he's trying to get the NASA contracts, which he's already starting to get. But that's a whole different ball game.
Yeah.
So the thing is this is that let's face, like Eric said, let's put our feet on the ground here. There's a few things that are absolutes. The president, no matter what political party he hails from, cannot order a private U.S. company dealing in commodities to temper the price unless he enacts certain types of federal acts, which the courts would overturn anyways immediately.
Yeah.
So he's not going to go ahead, and he cannot affect paper as an example, and he's not going to. He doesn't. That's not part of this. Um, the problem is, what does a 54% tariff do to the gaming industry? So let's keep this all on ground. This is what it does. It increases whether you are an importer of games or an importer of things to make games. That's the first thing to understand here. It affects both. So whether you, like Kelsey probably, do a great Kickstarter and you want to buy 10,000 copies of the new game that she's putting out, or whether or not you're like me, who wants to buy the paper and ink and material and I'll bind it and print it myself, we both are affected by this 54% tariff. But also, whether or not you buy things like dice, minis, boxes, whatever from China, or whether or not you make them yourself in the United States, if you're buying your raw product from China, which 99% of people do in this business, then you are being affected by this with a 54% tariff. And what I cannot wait for, and this sounds mean, but I cannot wait for it, is for someone to say, and you're going to start seeing it here in the next week or two, people going, I ordered $500 from games from blah, 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 and I got a paper in the mail saying I owe 54% on these before I can pick them up. That's what's coming, people. That's what's coming. And that's what everybody in this chat has to understand. This is why, again, and Eric mentioned it earlier, look it up, de minimis. It's that's what's been protecting all of you from buying Timu, low volume, a game here, a game there. Um, real quick, Agile Monk says, no one cares about the average person in this chat. That is true. That's very, very, very true. Um, you know, Agile Monk says here, I know I'm working with them right now. Yeah, I mean, I feel sorry for you. And then Agile Monk says this also: we have to care about each other. 100% agreed. I pay to support Ten Kern's channel because I want to support him, what he does for the hobby. Plus, I love for him and Rachel. Absolutely. And I guess we can kind of wrap this video up. We've been on it now for almost 40 minutes.
Yeah.
You know,
Before we do wrap, I want to say, listen, Stephen Glicker from Roll for Combat came in. He's been doing videos on this topic. I've only caught one, and it wasn't even a full part because I've been busy this week. But that's a good reminder for me to go and watch the rest of the stuff on Roll for Combat when it comes to this issue. Because, again, does it affect me personally? My games will go up in prices. Yes, it affects me. Does it affect the people that I know and love, the people that are a part of my community? Certainly. Does it affect people that are good friends of mine? Yes. And I don't want anybody going. I'm going to say this, and Don, correct me if I'm wrong. It isn't just the idea of the tariffs. It's the uncertainty that you can't plan around any of this because you really don't know what the next 2 weeks, the next 2 months, the next 2 years is going to bring.
absolutely. That's the reason why the markets are in the tank right now.
Yeah.
Also, because it is speculation. It's how okay, I'll talk real quick. This is what Unscripted Unchained RPG refit makes a good point. What is possible downtime between now and when factories for board game materials can be set up? Assume that there might be government subsidies assist in starting those factories. Let's say you're right, perfect world. Donald Trump announces tomorrow, you know what? I'm going to support the gaming industry. I'm going to give subsidies. This is the problem that you run into. The problem here in this is first of all, to build the infrastructure to produce games would take years. Then on top of that, where do you buy the machines at to make the games. There's only one place that makes them, China. Where do you buy the raw materials? So you not only, it's not as simple as building a factory to make, let's say, board games or to print books. You also have to have the infrastructure then also made to create the plastics for those board game pieces and parts, the paper to create to go put into those board games. The 327 or the 320 GSM Black Core, which only can get in China and Germany, who are being tariffed. So, the downtime is, it would, even if they were announced today, the downtime would be 3 to 5 years before we, you know, before we can even sit there and uh, deal with it.
Yeah.
Trying to find a post here real quick.
Roll for Combat, Ms. Jorglicker. The biggest issue is that these 54% bills are due right away. Don was mentioning this. He has stuff that he's going to have to pay the 54% tariff on that has been sitting in a warehouse at the docks. All of these bills are due as soon as they arrive in port, and a lot of people don't have the cash to pay these fees. It wasn't like it was like, hey, this is coming in 30 days, 90 days. Yeah. Get your shit in order. And again, the people that are being impacted by this are the people that produce the shit that you like, print the shit that you like, and if you go beyond the gaming industry, it's going to affect your iPhone, your car. Hey, I'm going out this weekend to buy my Mac Mini, $499 at Micro Center, because I can guarantee you, once they sell out, their next shipment's not going to be at $499.
That's right. Guaranteed.
Yep. So if you're on the fence about making certain purchases, you're going to be even hedging. I'm not a financial expert, but I would say bird in the hand, as opposed to a potential increase in price later. If you know you're going to get it anyway, I would say get it sooner than later. That's just my advice.
Yep. Roll for Combat says also people keep assuming that printing and making products in the USA will be cheaper. That isn't necessarily true. If you try to make an iPhone in the USA, those phones would cost over $3,500 each. Well, again, like we talked about earlier, is the other side of this is that was brought up earlier was, why can't we just let's just say perfect world, we built a game factory. I'm not. This is going to sound so cruel, but we're talking realities here. I'll say it again. I have never seen anybody protest a game shop because their board games are being made by cheap labor in China. You don't get cheap labor now in the United States.
Nope.
A lot of states, the minimum wage is excess of $10, $11 an hour. Even when I had my publishing company back in 2008 to 2013, I started people at double the minimum wage. Labor is a bitch in the United States. Labor is your number one cost in any legitimate business, is labor. That's your number one cost. It's not manufacturing. The problem is a lot of people go to China and they like the convenience of, well, I'll just order 500 board games that give me a great deal. I get my board games in, I sell them for $49.99, and I can compete. No longer. No longer. And Agile Monk says there's only 2 real manufacturers in the USA that still operate to create board manufacturing games. Belgium and Germany have some. That's right. And the thing is the 2 manufacturers in the USA, they do sell let me back up. He says there are only 2 real manufacturers in the USA that still operate to create game manufacturing machines. Yes, but this is the problem. What you're talking about is, I'll give you an example. There is a thing used in card making. What it does is you print your card on flat stock, and this is not designed. Well, this is actually designed whether you do any type of printing really that you do. It's a large cutter, and what they do is they have templates that what they'll do is you can print any whatever block of cards that you're cutting. I can go to China and get the parts for my printer for half the prices I can for the United States now. And I'll guarantee those two manufacturers in the United States are going to jack their prices up now, because that's what we do in the United States to our own people. Matthew Mellon says if it goes long enough for local manufacturing to develop, we then have reduced the tariffs of local manufacturing hosts, forcing us to keep high tariffs. Exactly, because there's the other part of it. Even once let's say, and this is probably going to happen, if a Democratic president is elected with a Democrat-controlled Congress in three-quarter years, these tariffs are going to be removed. So it doesn't matter what fantasy any of us want to live. The bottom line is this. What is hurting us right now is a 54% tariff. I don't care what side of the political aisle you sit on. These tariffs are hurting us, and they're going to cause a recession if this keeps up, because there's something that's going on here that we did not anticipate. These other countries are not backing down. These other countries are doubling down. They're creating trade pacts with each other. It's not happening like people like, and I'm not, again, I really wish that the politics could be left out of this and just keep it to the facts. I'm not mad at the fact that Trump is trying to do something for the United States. I'm upset the fact that it's being done the way it's being done, because it's hurting the industry, and it's going to be a trickle down effect. And like I said, I'm going to give it about a week to 10 days, maybe 3 at the most. Wait till you start people getting pissed off when they're ordering their one single board game and it's shipped from China, and they got to pay an additional, $8 or $12 on one board game.
Right.
And they're going to be on Facebook bitching and crying. And I'm sorry, but I'm going to be running underneath your post going, hey, pal, told you.
For those that don't realize it, it is essentially a VAT being imposed on the American people
with no foreseeable benefit.
And I'm not a politician. I am not an economist. Listen, I don't even play one on TV or on video, but the numbers in my mind seem excessive. And especially when you are not able to instantly start producing stuff here in the States to make up for what you can't get from outside. Now, I've heard theories that this is an intent to tank the stock market, to make U.S. treasuries more attractive, to lower the debt because we've refinanced our debt. I have no idea. Again, it's all sounds a little fugazi to me. But it impacts people that I know. It impacts people that I care about and I love. And that's what scares me.
Yeah. Chris Lundgren asked, can people appeal to Congress? Yes, you can. And you're encouraged to do so. I mean, already the other day, 4 Republicans moved away from their party and voted with Democrats to condemn the tariffs. So there's already some movement. But, and again, this is going to be the political insert, is let's face something about Congress. No matter what aisle they're on, Democrats and Republicans are the same fucking animal. They only give a shit about one thing themselves. And they only respond to one thing, and that's whether you vote their asses out. They're used to hate mail.
Yeah.
Chubby Funster, thank you very much. Drive safe, my friend. Agile Monk says it's just like almost near impossible to get offset printing in the United States. We have almost exclusivity printing or digital printing. Well, keep in mind one thing. There's a lot of offset printers. There's actually a game manufacturer in my town, in Battle Creek, Michigan, along with me. There is a couple of offset printers. There's a local one called Larson Printers. But they don't want to deal in anything game related. What they want to deal in is like menus and posters and simple stuff, because that's where the money is at for them, for offset printing. You go to China, they don't print games via offset. They print it digitally on digital presses. And for those of you who don't know, when I say digital presses, these are not wide formats. These are digital presses. These things are like 30 feet long. Go take a look at Amazon's operation. Those are digital presses. Those aren't offset. Agile Monks, California's minimum wage is off the charge? Yes, it is, because a one-bedroom apartment in LA is going to cost you 10 grand a month. Yeah, 54%. Real quick with some chat. Rory says, yeah, for the worker on minimum wage, they're still paying 6% of their income on rent, the rest on bills, miserable existence. Yeah, rent's very high, trust me. Even for like factory space and manufacturing space, it's extremely high. Climbing the Mountain says, outsourcing artificially propped up a lot of bubbles. Just because things become more expensive overseas doesn't mean they become cheaper to make here. No, they don't. Agile Monk says, yes, I know what you're talking about. They have those in Belgium, but they're still 2 to 3 times more than China. Absolutely. And see, that's the thing. It's we've caused this over decades. This isn't a Republican issue. It's not. And it's not a Democrat issue. It is a congressional issue who has allowed critical infrastructure manufacturing to be pushed outside the United States, because what we have done is we effectively tax businesses out of existence. And that's both Democrat and Republican. So, if anyone who wants to talk about this, we need to stand in the middle of the aisle and point at both of them, because they're both crooked as shit also. Oh, here we go. Good point. Agile Monk says, but the damage will be done and no one will ever bring prices back down to remove the tariffs. So keep it spiked, sadly. No, that's incorrect. I'm going to tell you the reason why. Because Agile Monk, keep in mind one thing. Board game prices are not being affected one iota wholesale. What I can buy a board game for today is the same as I could buy a board game for virtually a week ago. The 54% tariff comes into play is when all those board games, let's say I buy them, come from China that I just bought at a decent price, and they land on U.S. soil, hit U.S. customs. They immediately take out that big fat fucking tariff stamp and go, kunk, kunk, and it's 54%. Oh, this cost him $24,000. We had 54% tax on that $24,000. So that's the thing. Now, where costs of that board game will become more is there are manufacturers in China. This is what a lot of people don't know. There are publishers in the United States that sell board games that never stock a single board game. What they do is they do it in what it's called is, it's like a print on demand. It's called fulfillment. And what they'll do is when Eric, I'll pick on my partner here, Eric goes online and sees Don's board games. Eric goes, I like that board game Don made. I'm going to order it from Don. And he orders it from Don because Don is saying U.S. located. Don's board games is located in the United States. Eric buys that board game. What Eric doesn't realize is that order goes to China. China goes ahead and puts Don's label on it and ships it to Eric from China. Eric gets his board game and says, Don's board games. I'm happy I got my board game from Don in the United States. Now what's going to happen is fulfillment that's done from China. Eric will get a notification from Don's board game saying, you got a 54% tax, pal, to pay on Don's board game you just bought. And by the way, in my terms of service, Don's board games doesn't offer refunds, so Eric is shit out of luck. You see what I'm saying here, people? This is what the things that people are not thinking about. And that's the problem. Edward, solutions? Simple. Our country, our leadership, whether it be president or whether it be congressional, needs to step in and say, we got to stop this. These trade wars is what's happening. It does nobody any good. It has far-ranging negative effects on everybody. That's what needs to happen. That's the solution. So, I appreciate everybody in chat. We have had a robust chat.
Yeah, very.
We have over 100 people right now watching this live. And, the thing is, I really, real quick, Agile Monk says something here one more time. He says, but Don, most companies will add that to the cost and they won't lower it again after the tariffs are gone. They get greedy. You know what? Yes. But see, there's where a term I like to use called natural selection comes in. Okay? I'm going to be honest with you. If Wizards of the Coast wants to raise their prices by 54%, and when tariffs go away, we're keeping our prices where they're at, good, because guess what? I'm not raising, I'm going to drop my prices, and maybe I'll get a little bit more business because I'll be able to really grossly undersell the big guy. And see, that's the thing. This kind of balances itself out. You're always going to have people that are going to do stupid shit like that, but they then tend to adjust real quick. Watsy's a good case with what? The OGL scandal. They
Right.
tried some shit, and what happened? They stopped it. Why? Because you, my friend, my fellow gamers, didn't put up with their shit. And that's the same thing with pricing. So, and Agile Monk is right. That's exactly what Congress can vote down and stop the tariffs. But again, there's so much politics in play, and it's a mix of politics, but also the fact that we act like cattle as consumers because we play their politics. They need us to be Democrat supporting or Republican supporting. They want that because while the little people are fighting, we don't pay attention to what's really going on with these yo-yos. And I'm talking about all of them. So, you know, I just really think that this is going to not bode well for the gaming industry. It's not boding well for a lot of industries. The plastic model making industry. I have a lot of friends who have small hobby shops and game shops that have literally reached out to me going, what am I going to do? I'm going out of business. I'm not making much money now. I'm barely hanging on. And for those of you who, um, you know, are out there and you're the type of person that says, well, I can go to Amazon and get it cheaper than I can at Joe Blow's Hobbies, you know, now it's time for maybe you to step up. Go to Joe Blow's Hobbies and support your local smaller retailer, your smaller maker. Buy those aftermarket products that maybe still they're somehow getting a little bit cheaper. But, you know, it is a really horrible thing that's happened. It's going to be far ranging. It's going to be affecting. And I think that the average gamer who buys stuff, even on a semi-regular basis, will see the effects of this fairly quickly, probably by the end of April. And it's just going to be I'm it's a mess. All these Kickstarters and such. Me and Paulie Kidd. I'm just going to be for transparency. Me and Paulie Kidd was talking today about it,
Mm.
about our stars and sales. You know, um, I'm going to have to take a financial hit on the game now. I'm going to do it
Right.
because I'm going to fulfill, just like with D20 Delving, I'm going to take a massive financial hit on that. You know, not asking for sympathy, but that's the reality of what's happening here. But you know what? There's going to be a lot of Kickstarters out there that are simply going to say, sorry, due to the tariffs, we're not fulfilling. And they're just not going to refund any money at all. They're not going to deliver no product. There's where it's at.
Well, on that bright note, folks,
Yep.
live stream tonight at 8 p.m. Gamers Health, me and Rach. We're going to
Yep.
talk about sleep.
Talk about sleep. I might have to tune in. I'm going to be tuning into that because I think I need to take a long freaking nap after the
Yeah,
last couple of days.
little peek behind the curtain. Rach was diagnosed with mild sleep apnea. So, but we're going to address a lot of things when it comes to dealing with sleep, including my naps, because I'm addicted to taking naps. I'm an
Well,
old fucking
10
man.
Cars Tavern, 8 o'clock tonight. I'll be there. So will my wife. And, I'm just going to say in this in closing, everybody, is, this is not a joke, okay? This is not hyperbole. Not one thing have I said on this video today is not 100% true and factual. This is bad stuff. And I really hope that people can pull the political cork out of their butt on this and say, there's a time to be political, there's a time to be politically loyal. I agree with you. But then there's a time to say, listen, it's time to take the politics and push them aside because for the greater good of our community and creating and all that, this is not affecting just WotC. I know everyone would love to see WotC go bankrupt, or the majority of people would. Yay, good. But what about all of your friends who put stuff on Drive Through RPG that depend on those sales for that little bit to maybe get their car payment, because without it, they wouldn't be able to make their car payment or maybe pay their electric bill? They are fucked right now.
Yep.
And that is going to be the negative part of this. So think what you will. Like I said, just remember this video. If you're a naysayer, come back in about 3 weeks and let's talk again.
Oh,
We'll
I'm
do a
sure.
follow. We'll do a
I'm
follow up
definitely
video.
doing a follow-up.
Yeah,
Maybe sooner than 3 weeks, folks. I'm just saying.
yeah. I want to do. I'm going to put a timer. I'm going to do a follow up. Let's do a follow up on the first Saturday in May.
Okay.
It's a 30-day follow up, and that way we can see what the first 30 days of this has impacted. Because within 30 days, we're going to see a lot of the fallout among places like Ingram and Ingram Lightning Source and uh, one more. Who's that? They're out of Wisconsin. They make like prototype games.
No clue.
Oh no, come on. They're people in the chat know who they are. They make games. Game Crafter.
Oh, okay.
They're already expensive as hell because they're a small mom and pop. They do mainly a lot of prototype work for
Mhm.
their bread and butter is prototype work for Kickstarter and
Right.
such backer kit. They're screwed in this because nobody's going to spend $300 on a prototype board game.
Oh, hey,
So
roll for combat. That is the advice I was giving earlier. Essentially, if you are holding off and buying anything, buy it now while prices are still cheap.
yep, if you can get it now
Yeah,
before all these adjustments start happening because they're coming, guys. I mean,
yeah.
just they are.
Like I said,
So
if you've been waiting to get a Mac, iMac Mini, the M4,
yep.
the new one, the little 5 inch by 5 inch, $499 at whatchamacallit at Micro Center. It's $549 on Amazon. List price is $599.
Oh, hold on. I want to do one thing before we get off here. This comment right here. Let's actually see one of those massive tariff bills. Spencer, I got one for $7,000 this morning. That's what's my conversation with my rep. So don't talk to me about the tariffs being what you're insinuating, okay? Because you're talking to the wrong person to talk it to. This is ridiculous.
Uh,
So
the Nile is a river in Egypt, right?
yes,
Yeah.
it is.
Okay.
And I'll make Spencer a deal right now. Spencer, I'll make you a deal. I'll show you my tariff bill live on video here if you agree to pay for half of it. You want to take me up on that? You agree to pay for half of it. I'll sit there and show you my tariff bill. This is ridiculous. It's true. And wait till people sit there and get hit with stuff. So, Eric, thanks for tuning in, my friend.
Yeah, David, sorry, man. You caught the end of it. Catch
Yep.
the replay.
You might want to watch it from the beginning.
It's an
So,
interesting one.
everybody, thank you for tuning into our video today. Tom, by the way, I hope he is healing well.
Yeah.
He said last week he had knee replacement surgery yesterday. I imagine that right now he's somewhere. What do you think he is? Floating around in some magical world right now under good drugs?
I think he's in that dream world. Maybe we'll talk.
Probably.
Hey,
Yes, Edward. Both people do have hackles, and boy, you can get my hackles up when you start calling me a liar because I tell you what, this is really serious shit. And I did not like my phone calls this morning.
I'm sure that's the reason why we're here.
Yeah,
Please
I'm
go
actually the one
here.
who went to Eric and said, "Oh."
There you go. All right,
So
folks. Tonight,
everybody have a good day. Tonight, 8 o'clock, Gamers Health. Tune in Eric's channel. Please hit a like and subscribe on whatever channel you're looking at right now. We appreciate it. And everybody, we will just talk to you guys probably on Thursday, maybe before. Eric, we got to get our D&D gaming going real quick.
we'll work it out.
we got this
Tom
figured out.
Tom
Okay?
is Tom is crippled, so who knows?
Well, Tom is going to be off the narcotics here pretty soon, or at least he's
Yeah.
going to be in the good ones where where he can play D&D really good live
Oh,
online.
yeah. He'll be
So,
fine.
all right. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. Have a good night. Bye. Talk to you later.